All right. I'd like to call the first meeting of the Danville Services Assessment Steering Committee to order. And Ms. Finney, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Donahue?
Here.
Mr. Nicholas? Mr. Shanks?
Here.
Mr. Gilstrap?
Here.
Dr. Miller?
Here.
Thank you. Could we now do some short introductions of the members of this steering committee for the public? Mr. Shanks?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Fred Shanks. I am a member of Danville City Council and the liaison for the City Council on the Utility Commission. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I am John Gilstrap. I am a member of the Danville City Council and going on my 5th year and look forward to serving with you.
I'm Gary Miller on the City Council, currently serving as Vice Mayor.
Mr. Donahue?
Bill Donahue, first year of service in this term with the Utilities Commission, previously served on the Commission for 8 years.
My name is Philip Smith. I'm currently the chairman of the Danville Utility Commission, and I have served off and on with the commission since 2000, the year 2000. As a matter of fact. I have a short statement I'd like to read at this time to somewhat explain or capsulize exactly what we're doing here. And I want to say, first of all, that the assessment report that we have all been given, the 5-page report that was prepared by the city manager, is an excellent outline of our task. And I'm not going to take up a lot of time explaining that outline. It will become apparent to the public as we go through this process, I believe, of what we're doing. The last several years have been very challenging to Danville Power and Light. The recognition of these challenges has provided an opportunity to conduct a comprehensive examination of this organization's mission, its organization and operation, and relationship with our stakeholders, including our customers, our suppliers, our competitors, our employees, and our owner, the City of Danville. And also to recognize the complexity of operating a public electric utility. I've spent some time this weekend thinking about what I wanted to say today. And I could talk about objectives and strategies and obstacles and alternatives, and I could talk about identifying and developing and prioritizing. But I'm sure in the next several months, we're going to hear lots and lots of talk about those kinds of issues. But as I thought more about what to say today to start this meeting, I kept coming back to 3 basic principles. I believe our job is to be open-minded, to be inquisitive, and to be true to our mission. And I believe if we can follow those precepts, we'll have a good result to what I hope is going to be a very good process. And I thank you. City Manager?
Yes, thank you.
Please move.
For the benefit of people at home watching and people who will dial up and watch this at their convenience, I'd like to just explain very quickly what this steering committee will be doing. Danville has been a public power provider since 1886, and at that point it was in the streetlight business. Since then we've expanded significantly and are now one of the larger public power agencies in the country. There are about 2,000 of those. We're definitely the largest public power agency in the state of Virginia. There are 15 cities and towns in Virginia that provide electric service. And during that period of time, we've been able to give our customers the benefits that are associated with public power. Local control, reliability, responsive customer service, and until recently, comparatively low costs. What stimulated this steering committee's work has been the realization that we do not have currently competitive electric rates, and that's particularly true for our larger customers. Over the course of the study, you'll learn that public power agencies find it most challenging to meet the needs of their large industrial customers. By and large, they're competitive when it comes to residential and commercial, not as competitive for large customers. So this committee has been set up, half of the members being city council members, half the utility commission members, and we'll go through a series of 8 meetings between now and mid-February, and we hope during that period of time to provide a considerable amount of information about the utility and the options the utility faces. And as the chairman has suggested, we're going into this open-minded, without any preconceptions. We're going to honestly and objectively assess what are the options for the city of Danville and the community. And at the end of this period, the committee may recommend to the city council any combination of actions, which can include adjustment of service boundaries for the electric system, expanded privatization of operations, installation of electric power generation facilities in Danville within our service territory, or any combination of these or other measures, or the outright sale of the electricity to another, of the electric utility to another provider. Because we know whether people are able to attend these meetings or not, there'll be considerable interest. We are maintaining quite an array of information products, so to speak. We'll have a web page on our city website that will store all the documents that will be delivered to this committee. We're in council chambers, so the meetings can be televised, and those meetings will be available archived. So what we recognize is there are going to be people interested in this, whether they're here physically or not, because some of the companies that we serve in Danville have corporate headquarters elsewhere and other plants. We want them to be able to access all this information. The committee will meet on the first and third Mondays of the month. The Utility Commission meets on the fourth Monday of each month. And it's important to note that while we're undertaking this study, the Utility Commission is also undertaking a biennial rate study, which is a considerable effort. And because that has some connections to this study, chances are we'll bring some of that activity into this public arena and broadcast that as well. In November, the Utility Commission will receive recommendations on the initial rate configuration for the next 2 years, and that might be a meeting that would best be held in this room and televised so it can be available to people interested in the rate study. In addition to a whole bunch of information, we're going through what in effect is a strategic planning exercise, and we have some outside help that we're bringing in to do that. Part of that strategic planning operation will be completed with this study, and then part of it will be done after the recommendations are prepared to the City Council, because depending on what the Council chooses to do with the utility could have very different implications on how we implement the next step. The item today, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I'll ask Jason Gray to step up and provide the informational presentation for today. What we intend to do in this session is give the steering committee a good portion of the information it needs to better understand Danville Utilities, the size and scale of the power and light operation within Danville Utilities.
please speak up and ask any questions as we move through this. There's a lot of information packed into these slides, so please stop me if you have any questions. Danville is the largest municipal utility in Virginia. Most of Virginia is covered by either an investor-owned or cooperative utility, but Danville is the largest one of the 15 municipal utilities in Virginia. And the list of the municipal utilities is in the top right corner here. The region that we're in the United States, we're in the what they call the PJM RTO. RTO is a regional transmission operator, and PJM stands for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland. It's basically just the region, and their responsibility is to manage the transmission. They do not own generation, but their responsibility is to get the generation to meet the load. But we are in the AEP zone, or what they also call the Blue Ridge LNP. And there are some parts of the country that do not have RTO, but our part of the country, we do have RTO, and it's called PJM. And you'll hear me talk more about that as we go through the slides. This is a good map of our service territory. It's about 500 square miles. It also shows our gas service territory, which is a little bit more than the city limits, and our water service territory is the city limits. But our electric service territory covers part of Halifax and Henry County and goes north about halfway up into Pittsylvania County.
Excuse me,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman.
Please, sorry.
What percentage of our customers are outside the city limits?
We'll get into that here in the next couple slides. I'll have some numbers for you. A little bit more about how our power is generated. Most of our power is generated by AMP, American Municipal Power, who is in Ohio. The rest of the power that we do not have contracts with them is bought off the market. So, and I'll discuss more about our generation projects with them later, but the power is generated from AMP through the grid, through PJM, as you'll hear me talk more about. And we also have Pinnacles Hydro, which some of you may be familiar with. And then it gets on our local grid here, our system, and is distributed through our own local distribution system to the customer and eventually to a business. So it starts at a generation plant through the transmission grid, the 765 or 138 transmission lines, down to our substations, to our local distribution, to the customer's meter.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, back to that, sir, if we could look at that prior slide. Now, you indicated that we get our transmission through PJM, but don't we also have one asset that we source that's outside of PJM interconnect that we actually transmit through to?
We actually will have several assets outside of PJM. PJM, like I said earlier, is a transmission operator. We are participants in generation assets outside of PJM as well through AMP. One is Prairie State, which is a coal plant. There will be some hydro plants that will be coming online here next year that some of them will be outside. They're in what they call the MISO RTO, the Midwest ISO. Yes.
Following up on that, so the congestion charges that we were hit with this past year was mostly PJM, but the fact that some of our assets are outside PJM, are there secondary congestion charges?
The congestion happens within the hub, and our hub is the AEP Dayton hub, and I got an entire section about congestion.
Okay.
And I want to explain that then and how we're going to try to circumvent some of the congestion in the future.
Thank you.
Just some statistics about Danville Utilities. We employ 165 employees, 75 of them power and light employees. 17 substations, 100 miles of 69 kV transmission lines that are our transmission lines between our own substations. Again, we're the largest municipal electric utility in Virginia. There's 15 municipal utilities in Virginia, and we're members of AMP, APPA, American Public Power Association, and MEPAV, Municipal Electric Power Association of Virginia. This is just our organizational chart for Danville Power and Light. It shows you the different work groups within the division, from the line distribution work group to substation to engineering to metering to hydro.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Jason, this may be the wrong time and place, but at some point, the initial, and this might be for Mr. King, the initial report that we were given, the 5-page document that kind of explained our mission, on page 2, on the paragraph 1 on page 2, talks about relatively high administrative overhead and transfer payments.
Yes.
Can you address that statement at some point? I don't know if this
Yes.
is the right time or...
We will have a presentation at a future meeting that explains all of that, but let me just put it in context for you. The utility department is served by a number of back office functions that are operated in the general fund. So the city attorney's office, the city manager's office, finance, human resources, IT, information technology. If we were a freestanding utility, like a co-op or an investor-owned utility, we would have all of those functions as a part of the enterprise. In our case, it's a part of the general government. So we go through an assessment, and that's confirmed regularly using an outside firm to calculate what is the fair burden, financial burden the utilities, and within the utilities, each of the enterprises should pay in that. So that's what constitutes the administrative costs. And the electric fund, I believe, pays in the neighborhood of $2 million in annual fees to the general fund for those functions. But
Following
we'll
up on
get
that,
into that in, I think, adequate detail at a future meeting.
okay, just to cut to the chase, though, it does that indicate, does that payment compare favorably or unfavorably with similar payments by utilities outside of the city, such as a private sector utility?
What you see comparison for, and we're going to share that with the steering committee as well, are the transfer payments. Now, that's different than the administrative.
And I'm not interested in those right now. I'm just
Yeah.
concerned
There's
with
very
this.
little, there's very little comparative information out there on the administrative payments, but we'll give you the basis upon which those are calculated.
Okay, thank you.
This is a top 10 list of our top users, electric customers, and the percentage of system revenues they are towards our total electric revenues. Intertape being the top user of electricity on our system. Some of these sites here, I just want to point out, have multiple locations. City of Danville, obviously, we have several locations. Food Line, Danville Regional Medical Center. Some of the locations in, sorry, go ahead.
I would just point out that one of the things you'll see is Danville's legacy has really been as a residential electric provider. So you'll see in a few minutes the breakdown by customer type. But I think what's very interesting here is Intertape, the largest customer, is twice the size of the next, and they fall off very steeply. So within our top 10, to have a series of grocery stores as among our top 10 would be in stark contrast to a locality that served primarily industrial and commercial.
Some customers that are in our service territory but are not Danville Utilities customers and that are AEP customers, Appalachian Power, are Goodyear, North American Tower Mold, which was the Corning plant, Blue Ridge Fiber Board,
We don't have that slide.
the Schofield Industrial Park, the old Dan River Schofield Mill, and the Berry Hill Industrial Park will be AEP area as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask a question.
Go.
How long has that been the case? Where they've been Appalachian Power customers as opposed to Danville?
Since the beginning.
Has that always been the case?
Always been
Yes.
the case.
Always.
Yeah.
Could I make a comment about that? My understanding is that at certain times in the history of Danville, and going back to the 60s when Goodyear came to Danville, one of the main reasons Goodyear came to Danville was because of a economic development effort on the part of American Electric Power, which is headquartered in Ohio. And they were very instrumental in bringing that plant to their service area and siting that plant in Danville. The city of Danville can exclude certain, make arrangements to exclude certain territories from its franchise area and cede it to someone else, like American Electric Power. And that's been done in the case of Goodyear. The tire mold company there is Corning, another. If you can follow a trend, the fiberboard plant out on the Walls Mill Road was a U.S. Gypsum, which was a very large plant. When it
That was
first came to
Celtex
Danville.
one time.
These are situations where American Electric Power was instrumental in recruiting those companies, and they expected to get that as a customer, and that was part of the trade. Unfortunately, to me, what happens is when you have ceded that territory, as you did in the case of, for instance, American Tire Mold, that is territory that you ceded. You didn't give them the customer, you gave them the physical land. And once you've given it, it's going to be very hard to get it back, obviously, because American Electric Power is an investor-owned utility with a very specific, targeted, discounted rate for base load industrial customers, which we really can't compete with. Go ahead.
Something I do want to point out for all these customers own their own substations. They own their own transformers. So they pay a much larger reduced rate than what a Danville Utilities customer of that size. We provide all the transformation for our customers. So like Goodyear, Blue Ridge Fire Board, the Corning plant, they have a substation there that the customer owns. This is a breakdown of our customers. Over half of our customers are residential, 32% are commercial, and the rest are industrial. So you can kind of see in a real simple pie chart our customer base here.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Please, go ahead.
Is that based upon demand?
Based on revenue.
It's based on revenue. Thank you.
This is a breakdown about of our customers and where they're located as far as Danville, Pennsylvania County, Halifax, and Henry, residential, commercial, industrial. It's fairly balanced as far as residential, about 20,000 in Danville, 15,000 in Pennsylvania County. Commercial, it's about 3,000 in Danville, 1,500 in Pennsylvania County, and 30 industrial customers in Danville and 12 in Pennsylvania County. And this is monthly revenue right here in this right column.
Could you go back, please?
Sure.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Fred, go ahead.
This last chart you just went over if all right, we have a footprint, and I'm referencing commercial industrial. We have a footprint, and if a commercial or industrial site wanted to locate in that footprint in Pittsylvania County or in certain parts of Henry or Halifax County, does that commercial or industrial customer have an option, or are they required to use Danville Utilities?
They're required to use our system.
Thank you.
I have a question. I have two questions. First question is, the residential customers in Henry County, are they pretty much aligned with the transmission lines that come from the Pinnacles?
No, they're distribution out of one of our substations. They're distribution customers out of one of our substations, so it has nothing to do with the Pinnacles line.
Okay, so they are very closely, they're in the Ridgeway area across the line from Pennsylvania County.
Yeah, it's just
happens, little conclave there that
Right.
we happen to pick up.
Right.
Okay. Second question. The Pennsylvania County has 12 commercial, 12 industrial customers. Are they located in the industrial park west of Chatham? Or where are they?
Intertape could be one of them. The Ringo West Industrial Park on Kentucky Road, those are industrial customers on the east side of our territory. So Broswell could be another, the Broswell
But
Industrial Park.
Intertape is not in the county, is it?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is?
Yes, it is.
My bad.
Yep.
So that's pretty much the whole thing right there. Right? Yes. Thank you.
Good
Go ahead.
question.
I got it. Thanks.
Question, follow up on Mr. Shank's question. If an industry comes here and they're required to use Danville Utilities, however, can we give them an exclusion if they request that? Because obviously we've done it for some industries.
We could, like the Berry Hill Industrial Park, if it's a large enough
Right.
customer, then we do have that right through the State Corporation Commission. But it's up to us.
It's up to us to,
Right,
okay.
to give that right.
Define
Danville Utilities.
City of Danville.
The rates, it doesn't matter which jurisdiction you live in or your business or industry is in, they pay the same rates comparatively.
That's
Just
right.
because Henry is closer to the Pinnacles, they don't have any less rates.
The only thing different is the taxes. The county, the jurisdiction taxes. Like Pennsylvania County's tax is different than the city's tax, and Henry County's tax is different than the city's. So the taxes may be different, but the rates and the customer charges, they're all consistent.
There's two important things there. One is we do not charge a differential rate. Many utilities do. Many municipal utilities have a higher rate for customers outside their jurisdiction. Danville has always charged the same rates. And with the advent of the advanced metering, where we shifted all outside Danville customers to monthly billing cycles, all the customer charges are the same as well.
So we collect tax for Pennsylvania, Halifax, and Henry on our utilities? And in turn pay that
Then we
to
pay
them.
those jurisdictions.
And then we pay those jurisdictions their tax rate?
Right. Any other questions? This is a breakdown of revenue and expenses for fiscal years 2011 through 2013. Our revenue has declined, and I attribute that to some energy efficiency from our customers.
What else do you attribute it to?
I think our customer base has remained the same, so I would just say our customers' consumption has been more efficient.
Would the economy have anything to do with it?
We can check into that.
It would seem with less work hours or less shifts or whatever, you would have some impact there as well.
But as more and more people are switching appliances out to more efficient appliances, our load is forecasted to decrease marginally. As you can see, with our revenue decrease, our purchase power costs have also decreased, and that's why I say that. Net transfers, you can see our transfers on the fourth to the bottom line. Our debt service for each year, our general obligation debt service.
Question on the net transfers.
Uh-huh.
The net transfers include all transfers, not just that.
Right.
There are certain transfers that are built into policy, and then there have been additional transfers, and that includes all the additional transfers as well.
It includes all transfers, it does not include allocations to other departments.
Right.
Allocations are allocated on the expense line. How much do they total?
Do you know, Jenny, how much our allocations? We can, yeah.
It's about $2 million.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Roughly 2 million? 2%?
Can we get that, we need to get that information
It's
on
in
the
there.
allocations.
Okay, yeah. we can-
On the allocation, that's one thing we need to get, the allocations. Another thing, let's go back about 5 or 10 years and look at our units sold. I'm getting a feeling that we're talking about two different things here. We're talking about economic development, we're talking about population loss, we're talking about where are we in the greater scheme of things. And there's two ways to measure this. One way is to look at your units sold. Another way to look at it, then you have to look at your cost and your price. And I think if we could get some units sold data, it would give us an idea of whether we're growing or shrinking as opposed to what the price is. I think the price distorts somewhat
Okay.
what the demand is.
I guess the other measure for that would be total customer count.
Would be what?
Customer count, because I think we've seen shrinkage in residential customers.
Yeah, that's a
Both of
good-
those,
do that too.
both sets of data would be interesting.
Yeah,
That's good.
so you want to recap what we're asking for?
Jenny got it. And the customer count.
How many years? How many years?
Go back 7,
7 years?
yeah.
By units, are you referring to kilowatt hours?
Yeah.
Kilowatt
What it's the
Just
counting number. Excuse me, Dr. Miller, please.
O&M expense, is that operation and maintenance? Is that what they're saying? Why, it's going up $1 million a year. What's led to that? When power purchase, I mean, is down, sales are down. What's led to our expenses increase?
I could look into that more. I would assume our IT integrations with our AMI and other systems. We've deployed more and more systems over the past year. SCADA, IVR, outage management systems. We're going to have a new website here in the next few months that will give customers outage data. We're going to have more customer communication with our technology that we're working with. So that's driving up our costs, but it's allowing us to do more things. So our IT integration projects are adding to our costs, but they're better on the long run.
We can bring back detailed information on cost by
Exactly what that
category
Yeah,
over time.
is it employees' expense, insurance?
We
Is that
can
part
look
of
at
it, or?
Yeah.
No, okay.
Mr. Gilstrap?
The net transfers, that's electric only.
Electrical.
Correct.
Let me have a follow-up on that particular line item. The net is this for only the monthly dividend payment? I call that the dividend payment. That 13 number's out of line. There's something in there besides the monthly payment
What dividend?
for the transfer.
What 13 are you talking about? The 12,520?
The 12.52 million.
Yeah.
Could we suss that out?
We'll analyze that one for you as well.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
We'll analyze that one for you as well.
Yeah, it would seem to me, if you're looking at net transfers, including transfers from the Dale Power Light to the general fund, in the years back in 2011 and 12 is where you had some one-time transfers.
Right.
And
We- we did
let's
have-
see if we can look at that.
We'll analyze that
I
one
appreciate
before the
that.
next meeting.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jason.
Got one other question on the O&M expense. A portion of that is recapitalizing the business, and then a portion of that is the actual expenses to run the business. And it's interesting to compare the depreciation rate versus the recapitalization rate. So if we could understand what the recapitalization rate is, that would be beneficial. For the 3 years shown. Thank you. And that's pertinent also to the rate study that is going on, Joe, so I would assume we're already pulling that together.
I want to jump into our power generation projects and tell you a little bit about them. We're members of SEPA, Southeast Power Administration. It's a group that owns different generation projects across the country, but we're a participant in a hydro project. We purchased into 5.6 megawatts of 2 dams. The Kerr Dam east of here, as well as the Philpott Dam at Smith Mountain Lake. It's a peaking facility. It's not a base load facility, which means that we only use it during high load times. The AMP Fremont Energy Center is
I'm sorry. May I ask, on that previous slide, and I know we got congestion coming up in another meeting, but those 2 peak load assets, are they subject to congestion charges?
They are.
Even though they're in this?
They still have to, they're closest to our load, which is our system, but they are subject to some congestion, not as much as some of our other projects.
The power plant up in Alta Vista is beyond our service area too, is that correct? Would that be subject to the congestion charges? Thank you.
The AMP Fremont Energy Center is a natural gas plant. It provides intermediate capacity as well as peaking capacity for Danville, located in northwest of Ohio. It's been online for a little over 2 years. We're a participant of approximately 50 megawatts. 37 of it's intermediate load, about 12 of it's peaking, and we're approximately 7.3% participation in that project of all AMP, and it's 100% owned by AMP. And you can see all the various members or participants of that project and their participation level.
What is the DUCT again? The second column, third column?
Duct firing, it's peaking.
Peaking.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the difficulties that we have when we look at purchase power rates is we're only looking at the cost to purchase the energy unit, not the cost to transmit the energy unit.
Right.
And do we have available information to estimate the transmission cost from these sources that could be shared with this group?
The transmission costs are variable based on various events, weather being a big part of that. So these costs right here are energy only. The effective rate.
One of the things that's really important for us to understand, and I would think that AMP Ohio should be able to provide us this, is what that nominal and range is for transmission costs, and some understanding of the triggers associated with why that swings.
And you're alluding to some of the congestion charges that we...
Oh, no. I'm
we
just
were
talking
getting-
about normal transmission. In other words, one of the big issues that we have here is wheeling power to our location. And I think it's important that we understand the cost to wheel the power, not just in a congestion situation, but in the normal cost of doing business.
Transmission is about 15% of our energy charge.
I'd like to see that.
Okay.
And I'd like to see how that varies by source.
Unless there's some other event that spikes it, like a
Correct.
polar vortex.
Correct.
Is there any seasonality to that?
We could, I can look into some information and provide some more, but I don't have a
I
slide
think you're
today.
getting, we're looking for what triggers there may be, or what things that may, in the course of a 12-month cycle, may have some impact on this, one way or the other.
So for instance, it would be helpful for us to be able to see what our transmission costs are from these peaking hydro stations, which, oh, by the way, when they're turned on, there's reasons they're turned on. And we may be paying a bit of a higher price to get that power to us because of the event, because a lot of people want that power. But then when we're trying to compare, say, Prairie State to AMP Fremont, where Prairie State is in another MISO altogether, that would be very helpful for us to understand. So what that total cost of ownership is.
Right.
Okay? Thank you.
Definitely be our doc.
Right. Well said.
Speaking of Prairie State, Prairie State's a very large, brand new coal plant in southern Illinois, 1,600 megawatts. It's not owned by AMP. AMP's a participant, 368 megawatts. They are not in PJM, the RTO that Danville's located in. They're in MISO, which is the RTO next door to PJM. The effective rate is displayed in the far right corner column here. What's neat about this plant is there's a coal mine right next door to the plant. So they bring the coal right out of the ground into the plant. There's no railing of coal across country to the plant. So it lowers the cost of generating power.
And we're the largest owner of this plant.
We are the largest AMP participant of Prairie State. It's a good portion of our base load at approximately 50 megawatts.
The effective rate is going down until the year 2018. What happens then that it jumps back up?
In 2018, they're planning on taking the plant offline for an extended period of time for maintenance. Prairie State is, so that they'll have to take the plant offline, and we'll have to purchase power off the market. So they're already forecasting that purchase in order for participants to make plans for it.
So that's not the rate they're charging, that's the rate.
Well, that's the rate that they're forecasting for this time period, because the plant's going to be offline for 3 or 4 months during that year for maintenance.
So because they have a supply contract, we have a purchase supply contract with them, they will be supplying power on our behalf?
They will not be supplying power. We're in take-or-pay contracts.
Oh, okay. So because we're in a take-or-pay, that's a projection, but we're actually going to have to go out and find
That's right.
those 50 megawatts.
We're going to have to find replacement power during that time. And anytime the plant's offline, if they have a equipment failure or something breaks, we have to go out, or AMP does for us, and finds power to replace Prairie State's generation.
How long is Prairie State projected to be offline?
During that period in 2018.
Right, they're shutting down in 2018, right?
Yeah, 3 or 4 months.
3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
And then is it our intention to stay with them once they come back online?
Yeah, we're owners in that plant, so we're in a take-or-pay contract.
When did that plant open?
January of 2012, I believe is right.
And
It's almost 2 years old.
Is it currently operating at the projected load factor that we see there?
The capacity factor is 75%. and
Are both trains running? Are all
with
the trains
both
running?
units running,
Okay. So they're all running now?
both units are running.
Is the president of AMP still running the place?
He's the interim. They're hiring a new president of Prairie State.
Okay.
This is the plant that was late coming online?
It
that
is.
right? It's the one that got us in trouble under collecting?
It was late coming online, which escalated our cost. And when it came online, the capacity factor wasn't where it needed to be, so it rose our cost. So this was, it delayed our forecast.
So is this standard, every 6 or 8 years they go offline for a while?
Pardon me?
Well, they started in 2012, and 6 years later, they've got to go offline. Is that standard for the
That's
industry?
standard. And they'll follow that pattern throughout the life of the plant. They have smaller shutdown periods periodically throughout the year, but nothing this long. Pinnacles Hydro is a facility we own. It's been operational for almost 80 years now. 9 megawatt facility. It generates about $300,000 credits because of its peaking capacity. We can turn it on during high consumption times, especially during a 1CP event, AEP's one coincidence peak time. It's a very good asset for Danville. Yes.
The Pinnacles is not subject to congestion charges.
Right. It's totally behind our meter.
All right, so it isn't a matter of where it's located, it's whether we own it and where it's located?
Pinnacles is not connected to PJM. It's only connected.
It's directly connected to us.
It's only connected to our system. If I'm flipping too quickly, please stop me. AMP Hydro is a group of 3 hydro facilities, dams. They're also called run of the river hydro facilities. Yeah, some of them are located in Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, but they're located on the Ohio River. One of them is coming online here in a few months in January. The other 2 will be later in the year. The effective rate is higher initially until the debt service is paid off, but the life of these dams is, if it's anything like our own hydro plant, they'll last 70 or 80 years. So the effective rate in the future could be $30 to $40 50, 60 years down the road.
But the foreseeable future, we'll be paying
Debt
an
service.
in other words, it's not helping us keep our rates down.
We'll have to pay.
In the long run, it will be.
It would be in the long run, but we're also in a take-or-pay contract with this project as well. In the long run, this will be a very good project for Dan.
So when will it, okay, you've got numbers through 2018, when will it become a good project for Dan?
I think the debt service is probably 25 to 30 years, but they're going to restructure the debt several times through that period, so I see that coming down. We're one of the largest participants in that project as well, 22 megawatts. The capacity factor on that is not as high as a coal plant or a natural gas plant. It's about 60%. So on a normal day, we would only receive about 60% of that generation. But it is part of our baseload generation. 2 other hydro facilities that we're participants in, also on the Ohio River, are Meldal Greenup. Greenup is an existing plant owned by the city of Hamilton, Ohio. Once Meldal is fully constructed, Hamilton will give up ownership of that and become 51% owners of the plants. AMP will own 49% of it. We're 8% participation in both of these projects. And because Greenup is already an existing plant, the effective rate is much lower. Both of these plants are in PJM. You can see our 8 megawatts here. Hamilton is almost 90% because they already own Greenup, and they're going to take 51% of once the melt-off plant is fully constructed. Here's a diagram of where all the plants are. Willow Island will be online next summer. Green Up is not identified. It's right here at the bottom of Ohio on the Kentucky border. Melt-off is also on the Ohio-Kentucky border. Cannleton, which will be online here in January, is on the Indiana-Kentucky border. And then Smithland is in Illinois on the Kentucky-Illinois border on the Ohio River. This is a summary graph of our portfolio. It shows our 20-year projection of our needs as well as our current generation. The bottom being Prairie State, and then the light blue being the hydros that are coming online. As you can see that in 2021, we have a significant peaking need. So we'll have to go out and find other generation to meet that need. But in the next 2 years, we're actually over. So we'll be selling some of that power back if we don't use it. This year, we were actually under a little bit because of the cool summer that we had. We didn't have to use that peaking. We didn't need to purchase that extra power. The green and the yellow and the orange are all strips, basically blocks of power that we buy. As well as this tan color. The tan color is a Morgan Stanley block that will go into effect next year through 2020. Those blocks are sold by AEP and different companies. So that's a very good slide of basically summarizes our generation needs. But we do have a substantial peaking need coming up in 2021, about almost a 60 megawatt need that I'll show in a future slide here.
I understand correctly, 2018 will be on the merchant market for most of that Prairie State power as well.
We do have a need in 2018, a smaller need. It really escalates in 2018.
But we're not going to get all that power out of Prairie State that we're showing, are we? Because isn't Prairie State going down in 2018?
But we'll replace that with other purchases
Right,
for
but
that.
you'll be on the merchant market for 50% of your power in 2018, based upon
for those 3 or 4 months. Yeah.
Okay.
Here's a good slide. It shows our base load, which is basically our everyday need. And this is Prairie State, the hydros that I talked about, as well as a block of power from Morgan Stanley. This is basically our everyday need for electricity during cool temperatures or normal temperatures. This is our intermediate need, which Fremont provides, the natural gas plant in Ohio. And then anything above this red line is peaking need. And you can see we peak in July, well, really throughout the year, but mostly in July and August. And our peaking needs are provided by Fremont to 12.2 megawatts, our own hydro facility, and the 5.6 megawatts at SEPA. That totals 27 megawatts of the 89 megawatts that we'll need over the upcoming years. So we have about 60 megawatts needed.
Now, good stuff.
So what are we doing to protect ourselves from the congestion that we've talked about over the past few months? We've been looking at, or talking to various companies about bringing generation to our territory. Well, it's solar, natural gas, could be any kind of generation, but it needs to be dispatchable generation that we can cut on during peak times. And we're not looking for base load or intermediate load, because we already have that met with our current contracts with them. But we're in discussions with a couple solar projects about 6 acres equals 1 megawatt. And we do have a significant natural gas project that we're working on that could provide us up to however much power we need, but approximately 40 to 60 megawatts. The reason we want it here on our territory is because it saves on transmission and any congestion issues that are happening on PJM. If it's here on our system connected into our own transmission system, we don't have to pay those costs. So it saves our customers money.
A question for you. If we were successful in landing a natural gas plant, would we be required to install new transmission lines, or would we be able to use existing lines? In other words, is that going to be a cost above and beyond the cost of a plant?
We would ideally build it near our existing transmission lines or near one of our substations.
Which would either be near the Pinnacles line coming in or somewhere within our...
Or our 69 lines that are between our substations that we have now. And it needs to be near a high-pressure gas line as well.
And we don't have anything like a 69 kV line near Berry Hill?
Not near Berry Hill, but near 58, we do.
Okay.
Question. So if we had such a natural gas production, would we be able to keep what we need and sell the extra, or would we have to sell a certain percentage if it was funded by?
If we owned a plant, we could size it however we want to and sell it and interconnect it into PJM, but ideally somebody else, would build a plant and we would purchase the power from them behind our meter. Okay. And we would just purchase what we need and not worry about being a wholesale power provider. Some of the other things that we can do for congestion in the meantime, since we're not going to have a plant built this winter or next summer, we can enter into auctions. They're called financial transmission right, or FTRs. They're auctions held by PJM throughout the year. They're basically, you're hedging your congestion. You're locking in at a certain price per megawatt. And we've entered into a number of auctions already this year. Most of them haven't cleared, but we did clear one. We entered one in for this past summer that didn't clear. We didn't enter a high enough bid. We entered in 30 cents a megawatt and it cleared at $2. The one we did clear was for this winter. We entered in approved 65 megawatts at $3.60 a megawatt hour, and we had about 30 megawatts purchased at $3.44. Sure.
In January, February this year, when we had the congestion issue, what was the equivalent rate, price per megawatt? Can you relate it to these numbers?
I'm not that quick.
Can you provide that?
It's.
In other words, the number that we ended up dealing with in January and February would have been much larger than these numbers?
Yeah, we can figure that out.
Okay.
But this will basically lock in our price per megawatt hour for this period of time. Hedging prices, you either can look like a winner or you look like a loser.
I think this graphic kind of gives us an idea, comparison-wise.
So,
I'd like to ask a question. This term financial transmission right, where did that come from?
it's a term that PJM uses for their auctions, for these hedges.
Wall Street.
And there are only certain times a year that you can enter into these auctions. You just can't say, I want to hedge 50 megawatts for so many months. You have to enter these auctions and place a bid.
How much, are they scheduled, or
These
they?
are scheduled throughout the year for certain.
They're scheduled throughout the year? They're not dependent on some volatile weather event?
No.
And how far in the future are you buying?
Well, the only one that we purchase into is for December of this year through February of 2015. And we tried to lock in 65 megawatts at $3.60, but we were only able to get 30 megawatts at $3.44.
When was this transaction? When
This
did
was-
you commit to that?
This was done over the summer, May, I think.
So you're running 6 months ahead. So you're buying futures on the transmission price.
And this-
Transmission only.
Just congestion.
Congestion. Just congestion.
This is not transmission.
That's not it's congestion.
Congestion only.
And for what time period is that purchase good for?
December 14, February 15.
Use it or lose it?
It's a strip.
So if I'm in a position where I'm getting hit by congestion charges across that entire time span, it's good for the entire time span? It's not good for just a limited duration?
It's
of
good
it?
for the entire window there, that 3-month
Okay.
window.
So this is insurance, so
Basically.
are there any actuarial studies that tell you what the strike price is, whether it's smart or not?
This is a price that AMP recommended that we enter into, so they've done the
Okay.
research and
Okay.
advised us to get in at this price, but no higher.
Okay, well played. Which brings me to my second question. The earlier, you don't have to go back, but the earlier slide talked about power cost control actions. All the information that we get about our power supply comes from AMP. Is that correct? Well, I just want to bring this up while we're sitting on this subject right now, because it seems to me that AMP has a dual activity here. They're selling us and they're advising us. Now, I understand that they are a joint action agency and they're supposed to be neutral and, they don't really own anything, they just buy it for us. But they do have two hands in the game, so to speak. It's being the buyer and the seller. They're part of that transaction. And they're also advising us. Now, I believe that we should think about, somewhere down the road in the course of this process, think about whether or not we need to have some power supply advice, some outside help on this issue. I know that a lot of people use power supply advisors, and I don't know, it's a pretty complex area. We may need to put another set of eyes on it. And I'd like for somewhere along the line to have a discussion about that, certainly not today.
We do have consultants that review any purchase power contracts that we get into. We do have that resource. We do have consultants that look over to us and advise us. We don't solely rely on AMP.
Okay.
So we do have those consultants that advise us.
Okay.
Well, just to follow up on his line of questioning there, if I could, please, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
When a congestion fee is paid, who is the beneficiary of that payment?
PJM,
And PJM is owned by who?
they're their own organization.
Okay. Does AMP Ohio have any ownership in PJM?
No.
So in fact, they are independent. So in this case, it is in their best interest to advise their membership to utilize this instrument if it makes sense for their membership. Okay. Thank you.
Proceed.
So that's one thing that we can do to help prevent congestion, other than building a generation plant, which is not a quick viable thing to do, but we're looking long-term to do. So this is short-term. That's one thing. Second thing we can do, I'll jump back. Let me finish with the FTRs first. Other than this past January, we've only had one real spike in congestion, and that was back in January of 2011. Other than that, it's been 30% or less. We had a spike in 2013, but it was $3. So the few hours that it spiked in this past January rose the cost of the congestion charge. So
Jason,
Yes.
you lost me on the 30% and the $3. Can you explain that? I'm not seeing it on the chart.
You talking about the hedge that we made? The 30 megawatts that we purchased into at $3.44?
Where, on this chart we were just looking at,
Okay.
was there any reference to the $3?
The $3 in January of 2013?
January 2013, okay,
Approximately $3.
okay, I'm with you.
But other than those three different events, you know, congestion has been a non-issue. But we have to protect ourselves against future events. And the FTRs are one way of doing it. Another way to do it is a swap. We've already entered into a swap with Nextera. We're going to basically trade power with them for this winter and next winter. It moves power from the AD hub to the Blue Ridge LNP hub for Prairie State, the base load power that we get from Prairie State at a flat rate, $2.15 a megawatt hour this year and $2.05 for next year. So this is another way to protect a portion of our needs. It's not going to protect all of our needs, but it'll protect a good portion of them.
Now, this is a good slide. Now, when we look at that type of a swap and that charge, is that our full charge, or does that then get added onto it a 15% transmission charge within?
It's just congestion, doesn't include transmission.
This is just congestion. So it's just
It's a hedge.
it's a hedge between a couple of, basically, this organization that is essentially swapping power between two different
Right.
hubs.
We're basically swapping them from one hub to another.
What's payable at the time of the contract sign? The total amount?
Total amount.
So if we go back to what this does, which is a hedge, and that means during January through December of 2015, are we paying that, or is that what we pay when a congestion incident occurs?
No, we're paying this, we're locked into that swap.
Okay, so let's think about what that does to our power cost. So what we think of as cheap power, right? And this is not meant to be critical, just trying to run the numbers here. I'm taking power that I'm buying at Prairie State for, let's say, 71 cents. And I'm adding on another 21. So I've got power that's already up to 92 cents, or 92 cents, say, or $92 for. Oh my goodness, it's a lot of money.
For only 50 megawatts.
Well, that's the entire capacity that we purchased into it.
But that first 50 has to be assigned that congestion charge, right?
Yeah, so we're taking, pardon me, I was incorrect. So if our effective rate is, say, 73.66 a megawatt hour now, we're adding just $2 a megawatt hour on. So we're at roughly 76
Yeah,
per
75,
megawatt.
76.
So that's pretty cheap.
So
Insurance.
You can either look like a winner if you have a.
Yeah, but I mean, you're not
It's a
talking
safe
about,
bet.
it's pretty cheap, insurance, at $2. Okay.
It's for a short period of time too.
Yeah, so it's roughly 3% of what we're paying for the power now. That gives us a pretty good hedge.
It's an insurance policy. basically.
Yeah, that's pretty good. In my way of thinking, that's pretty good.
This swap was made last November, so it's a swap we've had in place for a while.
Good. And I'm sure it's beneficial to whoever else is making the swap
Absolutely.
as well.
They wouldn't have made it otherwise.
Clever. Very
Quick,
good.
you said this was a deal that was worked out last November? Just curious, why didn't we have one in place for this past year if we worked it out last November? Had we had that in place, that spike would have been much smaller, is that correct? I mean, much smaller.
Our cost would have been smaller.
Well, it would have cut it by about a third, because it's about a third of our power.
About $3 million.
But
That's
we're
well-
only hedging.
That's
about-
very well done.
Let me go on to the next slide here. We're only hedging about 75% of our base load here. The other 25 is unhedged and left up to whether events are coming. So we have Prairie State here, and then the other 30 here, and all this others hedged. So about 75% for the next 2 years. So that's some of the things we can do in the short term without building generation facilities here on our territory. But the long-term plan is to have something behind our meters.
I mean, heck, hedging's good at $5 a megawatt hour. In my book,
Yeah.
guy's trying to
It's-
get a real deal
It's
there.
kind of like we purchased the hurricane insurance after the hurricane.
Yeah.
That's a good analogy.
But remember the chart Jason showed of how far back it was before any
Right.
congestion of any magnitude was experienced. So it's not like utilities were worried about congestion until this latest event, which was enormous.
Well, I'm still having trouble figuring, I mean, it was very wise to go into this in November and project ahead 2 years and buy this before we ever had anything happen. But why didn't we, what was the thought? There had to be a reason not to do it.
Historically, there was
2014?
never congestion events in our region, and that's why it was never recommended. That's my explanation.
Yeah, I understand that, but I just, had we just,
10 years of soft winters.
yeah, but what made us think 2015 was going to be the year, or in 2016 the year to take advantage of this
And
one?
it may not be, and we pay the extra money
Exactly.
to
I know.
protect ourselves.
I understand. It's just amazing to me that we got hit in 2014 after we just went 2 months earlier, had gone out and bought protection in 2015 and 16, but not.
That's human nature.
I mean, there's nobody to blame, but it's just weird how we knew there was a potential there, and we did something to avoid it, but we just picked the wrong year, maybe.
Right.
Well, it kind of reminds me when we went really into hedging on gas
Yeah.
a decade ago, right? Mm-hmm. Thank goodness we did. So,
Might be so.
We've lost money on that if you look at it that way.
right.
Sometimes it pays off. It's just like having insurance for a catastrophe. If it doesn't happen, then you're,
Yeah, but there are a couple of years there, Joe, where we would have basically put Lord knows how many people on the street if we hadn't hedged on
Yeah.
gas. So, I mean, it's good to see that we're applying what we've done in the gas business to our electric business, and I've done a pretty good job of it.
Let's go back to this FTR game. This is fascinating to me. Do they have, when they have these auctions, how long do they last?
Only a couple weeks, and you have to put your,
And there's no regularity or schedule as to when they're going to put up certain strips, or whether it's going to be a 12-month, or what the strip's going to be, just say it that
there's
way.
an upcoming auction for, I think this June of 2015 and May of 2017. So there's an upcoming auction for that time period. There's longer time period auctions and there's short time period auctions.
So some of them are quarterly, some of them are annuals, and the annuals don't necessarily start and end at the same day.
Right.
So what is this telling us? Do we know, have we learned anything from knowing what the time periods are and when the start-end dates are?
Have we learned anything?
Yeah, I mean, what are they telegraphing to us? They're trying to sell you something, and they know something you don't know. Now, what are they telling us by the way they configure these, the time period, these contracts?
Well,
You got any idea?
unless,
Okay.
unless they're
Hypothetical.
forecasting the weather, I don't know.
It's a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
It's always an emotional buy. So I think what you're asking is, what's the emotional state that triggers the sale? And obviously, it's done to trigger the sale at the highest price point possible. Right.
Yeah, but I would submit to you that they've got an algorithm and they know something we don't know about the weather or something.
Well, sure they do.
Because they're out there trying to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it could be Putin invading
Sure.
the Ukraine, right?
Yeah, I guess. Okay. Just thinking out loud. Go ahead, Doc.
Very informative. Its discussion is very healthy. My question, in layman terms, why are our rates higher? I'm assuming that everyone else has had the same problem of congestion fees.
You're right.
Right. So why are our rates higher than anybody else's, or most?
Several reasons. We entered into a take-or-pay contract for a coal plant that wasn't built, AMPGS. It was a coal plant that was a $3 billion plant. 4 months later, it was much higher, so the project was canceled. But we were participants in that project, and we had stranded costs. Those costs were realized this year, so we're having to pay back those costs through our power costs.
So our surrounding localities weren't affected by that?
Other AMP participants that were participants in that project.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's in addition to the
When they
congestion.
didn't hold up their end of the agreement, we couldn't shop elsewhere?
Well, we did, and
Power.
that's where Prairie State came in, the coal plant. We decided, since AMPGS was not going to be a real viable plant for Danville, we decided to go to Prairie State. Prairie State came online late, so we
All
had...
right, let me ask this as a direct question.
Okay.
How do other localities purchase power less rates than we do?
Different reasons. Some of them are with different investor-owned utilities. They're not investors like we are, or owners of the projects.
So we just made bad investments.
It's not bad investments.
Perhaps it might be beneficial. I mean, we know where our rates are versus Dominion and versus AEP, which are investor-owned utilities.
Right. We're going to show you comparative rates. In fact, the Utility Commission, I think council as well has gotten these, but we're going to spend some time going through them. And fundamentally, the investor-owned utilities, even after deregulation, benefit from buying power from their own generators,
Right.
even though they're separate business units now. If you compare our rates with co-ops, our rates are comparable. But if you compare our rates with investor-owned utilities, we're not competitive, especially in the larger customer classes. So I'm not saying it's of any comfort to one of our customers to know that we're comparable to co-ops when we're surrounded by AEP. And we have some customers that can literally throw a rock and hit the AEP service territory and wish that they were over there instead of where they were. But over time, Jason is describing the latest challenges to our costs. But if you go back before deregulation, when we were buying power in a regulated market, our rates across the board from residential or industrial were very competitive with AEPs. It was right when the deregulation took place that you may remember, our power costs went up 80%. And that translated into an immediate retail cost on average about 40% increase, and then we had double-digit increases for the next 3 or 4 years.
If I might follow up, I guess my concern is we wouldn't have this special study committee had our rates not been higher than anyone else.
Right.
All right. So I am assuming that other localities, let's just take an individual home, not in our service area, is paying less than our customers.
If they're in AEP or if they're in Duke,
Pardon?
if they're in AEP or Duke or Progress or Dominion, they're paying less.
That wasn't true a year ago, 2 years
It wasn't true a couple years ago. Yeah.
So I guess that's my.
And it's
in
all
layman
about-
terms, in 2 years, how did we get there?
It's about what we have to pay for the power we sell our customers. We can't go to AEP and get power from them at the cost they charge their large industry.
Plus, we also have about a close to $20 million hole we're in because we did not pass on appropriate adjustments in rates to our customers in a timely manner. So we're nearly $20 million in arrears, which is 1/5 of the revenue annually for Danville Utilities.
Until this past summer, we hadn't raised rates since 2008, and the power cost adjustment until February this year hasn't gone up since 2010.
Yeah,
Because of
so
the
so
stabilization.
we have a compound issue. Not only are we uncompetitive, but we are now recovering essentially 2.5 months of revenues that we didn't charge.
I think it's a mistake to think that other communities didn't have the same problem. Martinsville, as I'm not mistaken, had the same problem.
Oh, they have.
Much lesser extent.
Yeah, they have less investment in them, so, but they've had the problem. Same in other communities, the same problem we had. But we did undercharge for several years. I think we got maybe some bad consultant advice at the time, 4 or 5 years ago. But other communities have had the same problem.
Can I,
Let Mr. Douglas.
But that doesn't, I agree, everyone's had problems with power cost. I'm thinking just Danville, our residents are paying a higher fee than others that's not in our service area, okay? And you're saying that's to $20 million.
Well, there's a whole lot of things in there. We've already taken we took our hit on our stranded costs for the whichever plan it is.
Which is in that 20
Well,
million.
hey, look, Appalachian, we raised our rates. Appalachian can't raise their rates this year. They can't raise their rates the next year. They lined up for an appointment with the State Corporation Commission to raise their rates. They got stranded costs on coal plants. They haven't taken their hit on their stranded costs for 18 months. Don't you think they're going to get a rate increase the next time the SEC lets them do it? Of course they are. But a lot of this has to do with timing. It's happened before with us. It happened to us back when Joe remembers when. I can't remember, 2004, 2005, when we had to take the big increase. Within 18 months, Dominion and Appalachian were back in there, and they got the same rate increases that we did. We just able to do it. We don't have to schedule ours because we don't have to go through a regulatory process, and we don't have to make deals with the State Corporation Commission. Right. To me, I think that the thing over time there's a smoothing effect because everybody's got the same kind of problems. And the stranded costs that we got on this coal plant not being completed. Appalachian has closed up, AEP's closed up, how many, Joe? 15 or 20 coal plants and
60%.
taken big hits in the last 2 or 3 years, and they haven't used them all up yet.
AEP, they provide power to more than just Danville.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Are their rates the same to other localities as they are Danville?
In the state of Virginia?
In the state of Virginia, yes.
In the state of Virginia, yes.
Yes. And so, and they're filing, they went to the State Public Service Commission in March for their increase. And oh, by the way, they are not allowed to actually have any energy conservation programs for their local industries or residential consumers under their current agreement, which is also interesting.
So if they're providing power directly, do we add additional to our customers?
Are you asking if they're providing power directly to, say, a Goodyear or a Blue Ridge, or when we buy power strips from them?
No, I'm saying that if they're furnishing power directly to a customer, okay, at the same, and we're applying power to our customers, do we add additional amounts for overhead or whatever reason, $2 million for administrative costs or what have you, to those rates?
No,
So we essentially are charging the same rates as any other customer outside our district that uses AEP.
right. No.
That's a good question.
That last part, no. If, like Goodyear is a direct customer of AEP, that means all of the infrastructure that serves them is owned and operated by AEP. It doesn't come across our system at all. So we have no charges for electric for Goodyear.
That was a good question.
All right. But I can't get in my mind how we went from low to high in 2 years.
The cost, well, the 2 years are affected by these issues we're talking about, the true-up costs, the congestion and the stranded costs.
Three things.
But to fully explain it, you have to start with deregulation, where the cost of buying power for a municipal operation, any municipal operation or co-op for that matter that's buying power, is higher than for an investor-owned utility that can generate that power themselves.
But if we had have gradually increased our rates over the last 2 or 3 years instead of the flat rates,
Yeah.
we would be somewhere approximately at the rate we are now.
Right.
And that's still higher than anyone else. So I don't understand. I just don't understand.
What about the other end of the ledger with
why
our
we're
return
here.
on investment, the profit generated, which we then contribute back into the general fund?
Right.
Do we know, do you have the numbers with how much as a percentage of income or total dollars, the total dollars won't matter,
So
percentage
that-
of income, return on investment compared to?
Yeah, it's about 12%.
Okay.
And you're going to see comparisons. And Don Lund of the rate consultants indicated that from their experience, we're in the range that you see with municipals, but we're on the higher end of that range. So you'll see, we'll give you full information on that, and you'll see that some jurisdictions, including some of our fellow AMP jurisdictions here in Virginia, like Martinsville, like Bedford, are not transferring as much of their revenue to their general funds as we are. So that definitely has a rate impact. The challenge to the city council is going to be, if you reduce that, you're either going to have to cut operations in the general fund or raise taxes.
Is it possible to see, you said about 12%, if we reduced it to 10%, 9%, whatever the reduction
Right.
is it possible to see the impact that that would have on rates? I mean,
Yes.
First of all, is there a direct correlation?
Yeah,
And then
it's an
and then-
operating cost.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so is it possible to see those numbers? We went from 12 to 10 to 9,
We can do that study.
and then what would that do as far as the rate impact? And we can compare those rates to
It's a,
the investor-owned utilities.
that's a direct relation. So if we went back to where we were in 2011 at 8 versus 12.5 today, which is on slide 12 of the packet, we would have a 4%, roughly a 4% reduction, roughly, in rates. 4%. Not a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
Not the pain that people are seeing today, but every little bit helps.
We'd have a 4% reduction in rate-generated revenue that would be spread across classes, not uniformly. So don't-
Exactly. That's why,
Yeah.
roughly.
Yeah.
And that's where the numbers on the different rate classes would help.
But then there would be a need for a city
No,
council.
right. You have to, I understand that you have to fill that gap and city council will have to make that decision. I just think it'd be
That's a good
helpful.
question, yeah.
I think it'd be helpful just to see the numbers and let's see what the choices are and then
See
a
where
choice can be made.
Kilowatt hour charge would be.
A choice can be made after that, once we see the playing field.
Anybody have anything else?
You can wait till the next meeting.
Well, look, I've got something else, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
The 4 million that we're talking about between 2011 and 2013, most of the 4 million was not policy transfers, but was above and beyond transfers.
We're going to break that out for you. I'm not
But
sure I
but
can answer.
that's a factual statement. I mean, it had to do with economic development and blight eradication, did it not?
We're going to break that out because I can't remember exactly when those economic development transfers.
Well, just a little heads up, that's a good part of it.
Just for observation, I couldn't help but notice that in 2011, 12, and 13, the total revenue decreased and the net transfers increased.
Well, we had special projects.
Yes, you did.
Those projects did not occur in 2013, though.
No.
No, they were in 10 and 11.
Yeah.
Does
I
anybody
mean, I
have
think-
anything else?
I think that's a part of the answer to your question.
Mr. Gilstrap, you have anything else?
I'm good, thank you, Chairman.
Is the process working for you, John?
Pardon?
I think the process is working.
I think it
Ask
is.
the questions, and we can move forward here. I appreciate it. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say in closing?
Thank you. Good taking us through all this step by step and answering our questions.
That's too.
Good
Thank
job.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great job.
Well, we will reconvene. Oh, excuse me. Does the public have any comments?
Got a lot. We've taken some notes along the way. First, headed to SouthsideCentral.com. Couple questions I've got to Mrs. Gray on here. The Midland, I used to work with the Midland in my previous job on it. They've got 8 people running 24/7 down the Tredegar campus in Richmond, watching for these congestion charges, everything, ready to hit the buttons, doing future trades and things like that. Is Daniel represented the same way from A&P?
Yes.
Right. So they've got people monitoring. And why did Dominion get hit? Even though I know they're on a subsection of the grid, but if they still had connection charges, why didn't they get hit to the factor, their people, their 8 people sitting in arbitrage had to be a hell of a lot better than A&P's.
A lot of their generation is their own.
Gotcha. Right. Next question on time of use rates. Go back to the residents on this part. You were quoted talking about time of use rates for residential people. Nobody's on it. I'd love to go on time of use rate because it works perfectly for me. You said it's been advertised. I haven't seen it.
No, I said we'd be glad, we need to advertise it more.
Say that? We appreciate, if you want to do a news story with Mr. Gray, I'm sure Mr. Gray will talk to you after the meeting, but
I had to find a comment that I'll have on this part about it is the return on investment. What is the actual return on investment?
we are going to find that out, and that's one of the things we just talked about. We didn't come here to, we're asking questions at this point, Ms. Tedrick, and I'm sorry that the speed and alacrity of our answers is not quick enough for you today. But if you'll just follow this process, it will all be revealed. We are trying to set a pace here where we can collect this information and be open-minded, be inquisitive, and be true to our mission, as I said in the beginning, where we can better understand, both city council members and utility commission members, better understand the complexity of this business, and at the same time make sure that we understand what the realities and the facts in the past have been. So, and we appreciate you coming. Does anybody else have anything? Thank you, Mr. Campbell and Mr. Raleigh, for coming and being with us today. We appreciate your support. Mr. Manager, I adjourn this meeting. Thank you.